Hey, welcome back to the channel, and in this video we're going to continue with the disassembly of the 1990 Kawasaki ZXR 750/ZX7, whichever way you want to call it. This one right here, and we'll probably get to do a little bit of body work as well. Stay tuned. Alright, so I'm getting ready to fabricate the missing lugs from here and here. So that's what should be on there, and they're missing. So I'm using the Plastex product again. Heating up the molding bar. Molding bar will get shaped over one of those, left to cool. Once it's cool, we'll peel it off, and then we can fill it with the Plastex powder and liquid and cast a new one. I can then attach it using the Plastex product as well. It'll be nice and strong, so it becomes nice and pliable. It's getting there. All right, so I've kind of molded that around the lug. Let that cool. Once it's cool, we'll peel it off, and then we'll go from there. It occurs to me, it's not lost on me, let me put it this way, that this is the third ZX7 that I've been restoring, and so I guess I would say, apologies for the repetition. I know it would be nice to have something completely different to show you and to work on, but at the end of the day, I can only show you the stuff that's in the shop, and the stuff that I like, and the stuff that I decide to collect. For whatever reason that is, either because I got a good deal on it when I bought it, or I like the bikes, or whatever the case is, right? So I'm going to try to come up with some different ways of showing this stuff. I'm kind of drawing a blank at the moment, I'll be honest. I'm just trying to come up with ways to keep it interesting for everybody on the third time that I've done one of these. If you got any ideas, things that you want to see that I haven't shown throughout the process, let me know. I'm thinking about maybe some shorter videos. Maybe instead of going to, I'm usually around 40 minutes, 37 to 45 minutes, somewhere in there. But if 20-minute videos might be better, just let me know what you think. I'm just trying to keep it interesting while I'm showing you whatever it is that's keeping me excited here. I don't know if it's going to be exciting for you to see the third one of these, but that being said, I guess there's still going to be a lot of similarities no matter what bike I'm restoring. It's still stripping a bike. It's still stripping paint off. It's still fixing body work. It's still going to the paint booth. It's two wheels, an engine, and a frame, and a bunch of body work, right? No matter which bike you're working on. So as long as you're happy seeing what I'm doing, that's good. I still don't know what I'm going to be doing after this one is done. I don't have anything waiting. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. Spring is coming, and more of the old bikes will start coming up for sale, I guess. But until then, anyway, I'll keep you in the loop depending on what shows up. But let me know what you think. If there's things that you want to see as this gets underway, more detail, less detail, let me know. Put a comment below. Okay, there's the mold. See the shape of it in there. Matches perfectly to that. So now we'll fill that with Plastex, and then once that dries, then we can extract it and attach it to the other panel. All right, I'll start with putting the powder in here. This is the Plastex powder. Just want to do it a little bit at a time, just to make sure that and you add the liquid, just to make sure it penetrates all the way through it. So this is the other piece I have to fix. So this was sitting in here. that. However, I'm not sure what they used to plastic weld it, but the weld basically was no good. You can see the. What I will be doing is I'm going to cut out all the gray, which is welded like welding rod. That's going to get cut out. I'm going to take a piece of another fairing, this kind of shape, and I'm going to graft it in there. Alright, so here's what you do with these flush mounted turn signals. There's a very specific place that you have to store these, and here it is. Alright, so there it is. There's the first one that's been cast. Just needs to have the kind of casting swarf and whatnot removed, and then that'll be good to go on. So I've roughed up the area where the new tab's going to go. So I've roughed up the bottom of this, put some dimples in it, and just kind of roughed it up a little bit just to make sure the adhesion is a little bit better. Same on this one, kind of roughed that up as well. So what I'm going to do now is, before I started, I kind of marked some kind of crosshairs. So right where these guys meet is where the tip this is supposed to be. So I took that measurement before I started grinding, and basically what I did is I took a measurement from the tip of this to the tip of the one on the other panel that isn't broken, and similarly a distance from here to here on this one, and the distance from here to here, just to make sure that I get these things as perfect as I can. Okay, so what I'm going to do to get this stuck down as best I can is I'm going to use a screwdriver as a spoon, basically. I'm just going to put a little bit of the plastics powder onto the repair area. Just a very thin layer. Bring it in there so you can see that a little bit better. So I just put a little square of the plastics powder on. That will just make sure that I get a good amount of that plastics product underneath the repair tab. This is the one I want to use. And the difference, you have to remember to mount these the right way around, okay? Because on the other panel, they're actually mounted that way with these three prongs facing forward. But if you mount it the same way on this panel, it'll be kind of cockeyed because it's not exactly flat on the bottom. It's kind of leaning very, very slightly, so that when the panel is on the bike, these kind of go in perpendicular to the bike. So in this case, instead of these prongs facing forward, I have to mount it this way, which makes no hill of beans difference from aesthetics or anything. It's on the back side of the panel. It just means that you have to remember to mount that properly. Okay, made some measurements there. Got this oriented where I want it. So what I'm doing is I pump a bunch of the plastics liquid along the edge, so then it kind of gets sucked underneath where I put that powder, and then I'm going to actually put some of the whole plastics powder liquid product around the edges, just to make sure that I get good adhesion. And if you've never seen how this product works, you kind of put a drop of plastics in there, and then you pick it up with the needle, and then you squeeze to dispense the blob where you want it. So there's the second one there. Once it starts to dry up, it'll look something like that. That's still not 100% cured yet, but it's dry enough that it wasn't going to move when I did my measurements. So probably a couple hours. It'll be good enough to stick on there permanently. So we'll just leave those alone, make sure they don't get disturbed. And for this piece here, I have a scrap piece of fairing here. And this, I did not cut this up specifically to use as spare plastic, but this is already broken and it was missing pieces already. So it was a spare I had kicking around when I used to have my RZ350, another bike that I regret selling. But it does have kind of like the rolled edge on it already down here. So I'm going to see if I can find a good place to cut. Like, I'm thinking this might be close here to cut a piece out of here. Right, so there's my piece to graft in. It doesn't have to be perfect fit. It just has to be close. So it'll end up being right about there. Now, you might say, well, there's some big honking gaps in there, and well, yeah, you wouldn't be wrong. But all that said, by the time I get everything melted in there, those gaps are going to get filled in with plastic weld, and also with the Plastex product. You could actually make this all with Plastex if you wanted to kind of make the mold out of it from one of the other panels. It wouldn't be that hard to do. My preference is I just didn't want to use that much of my Plastex powder up, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to plastic weld this in place, and then I'll weld it in, and then any of the gaps that are left are going to get filled with the Plastex. Okay, all I'm using, this is just my my cheapy Amazon soldering iron. I have it at about 400 degrees. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to basically stitch this on, just tack it in a couple of places. Just going to hold this for a second before I let it go, to make sure the plastic is cooled enough to hold it in the position I want. Just got to make sure that you're not just melting the rod, you actually have to melt the ABS plastic that you're welding to as well, so it all kind of blends together. And make sure you take off enough paint. You don't want to leave any paint in the area that you're welding either, because that just will lead to a crack and a failure in the weld. And it's also important to weld it from both sides. It's that way I try to kind of go 50% penetration on each side. That way I end up with a stronger weld. Bring you in for a quick look here. That's kind of the focus. There we go. So that's where I've gotten to so far. I'm going to flip it over and go from the other side, and then I'm just going to keep at it until I've got it where I want it to be. Alright, so there's my my weld on the back, and of course you see that I haven't welded up here yet because I have to clean off there's still paint and glue and whatnot here, so I need to remove this foam and grind that back more. Similarly down here, I haven't filled that hole yet either, and I've yet to decide whether or not I'm going to fill that with weld or whether I'm going to fill it with Plastex. But either way, the other thing I am going to do is, so this is obviously quite rough at the moment. You see that? So I'm going to smooth that off with the little grinder, and then once that's smoothed off, I'm going to put the plastic welding gun staples in the back side of this, just for once I've ground this off smooth, it just provides a little bit more strength. Okay, so here's the plastic welding gun, and the idea behind this is you get a bunch of these little staples here. They come in different shapes depending on what you're trying to join together. This one's kind of this sort of shape. Basically, you put the two prongs in there, and when you pull the trigger, it heats that up red hot, and then you can basically melt that into the plastic. And then you let go of the trigger, wait till it cools a little bit, so then you can pull it out. If you keep hold of the trigger, it'll just pull this staple right back out of the plastic. So you kind of have to make sure that you let it cool enough. So the kit also comes with a pair of side cutters. So basically these are just for cutting off the metal pegs here, and then you can hit it with the grinder just to make sure it's nice and smooth. So that's what the welded and the stapled product looks like. So now that that's done, I can take my little mini grinder and just kind of grind all of that smooth, and it's going to be pretty solid. That's what it looks like from the other side. And then I'm also going to mount this back on the bike just to make sure that it fits okay, because this section here in between, this is where the passenger foot peg hanger goes. So I don't want to get to the point of having this all painted to find out that this is not fitting the way that it should. So by testing it now, I can check that, you know, the gap there is good for the foot peg hanger, and I can make sure that these lugs that I mounted are in the right place. Okay, so you can see here I've kind of ground it down a little bit, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the plastics on the back side. So in order to fill that in, I'm going to put this foil tape right here on the front side, and that will make sure that when I flip it over, I can now fill this backside with, I've kind of taken off the foam and I've ground back enough of the ABS plastic that that will adhere, and then I'll probably drop some plastics in here as well just to kind of smooth it off a little bit. I did take the grinder to that to some degree, but that'll all get really smoothed out once I put the liquid plastic. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bit of the metal tape on the edge here so I can build a slightly thicker, more uniform edge on this. All right, there's the liquid plastics. Just kind of gave it a bit of a coating on top of the welded area as well, just in case there's any small imperfections on top of the staples and whatnot. It'll just soak right in there. So once that dries completely, that'll be ground down smooth again. So it won't be totally obvious that it was repaired. So it looks kind of obvious now, but it won't be when it's all finished. That's some pretty old gasoline coming out of here. I'll give you a look here underneath the skin. And aside from the, everything being painted black, it looks pretty complete so far. It doesn't appear that there's been a lot of stuff messed with at all. Like the wiring harnesses and whatnot are all looking to be in pretty decent shape. All these plug wires are labeled. Somebody's had obviously the throttle cables off and they've labeled them for some reason. And some evidence of a mouse or something in there at some point. So we'll take a look in there. This will be coming apart anyway, the air box. But yeah, by and large, so far, it's early days, of course, but gives you an idea. Like everything here was, the upper fork stanchions here were painted black. So it's going to be a lot of work cleaning all the paint off and that kind of thing, but you know, that's okay. If that's the worst of it, is cleaning off paint, then you know, we'll count ourselves lucky, because some of these old bikes, once you get to, you know, 30 years old or 40 years old or whatever the case is on these old machines, it's yeah, the stuff you come across, it's quite interesting. So just because I can't stand this sort of stuff, these kinds of grips, I mean, you can call it personal taste, I guess, but I put these kinds of things in the same category as those cheap aftermarket flush-mounted turn signals. It's just crimes against classic motorcycles right there. That's horrible. Horrible. Okay, trying to get rid of some more of the atrocities here. The other thing I would note, despite this bike having the wrong exhaust system on it, which would make a huge pain in the neck doing oil changes, the oil in this is still quite clean. It's not bad at all. So just kind of trying to make sure I'm thinking ahead here and just getting some of the penetrating oil in all the right places, just to make sure, as I've said many times before, it's just easier, just take some time and make sure that spray penetrating oils. It just makes everything so much easier to take apart, right? So if I think it's going to be a pain in the backside to get apart for any reason, and a lot of these old motorcycles are, then it just makes sense to give it a shot of penetrating oil. Okay, so I just took the headlight bucket off, and I don't know if you can see on the video there, but these have I don't know what you would call it. It's just kind of it's not a tinting, it's just kind of like a honeycomb covering to darken the look of the lights, I guess. I don't know, I guess whoever had this bike in the past decided that really liked mesh looks of some sort, because they were all in the vents for the fairings, and we've got the same sort of honeycombish type of thing going on the lights here, so that's got to come off. So I don't know what's going to bring this off, but I think what I'm going to try to do is I'm just going to warm it, assuming it's just a decal of some sort. I'm going to warm it up a little bit with the heat gun, and then I'm going to take it off with the razor blade, see how that works. Okay, got all that stuff off, came off pretty easy. I'm just going to give it a little bit of the shot of Goo Gone, just to take any of the remaining adhesive residue off those glass lenses. Okay, so given that there's going to be a lot of paint stripping for this bike, I thought I'd show you the products that I have here. This is kind of the conventional hardware store stripper that I've been using, Super Dissolver, and this stuff is not cheap by any means. I think this stuff runs about $90 a gallon. This stuff is kind of the best I've been able to find at the hardware store, but you know, over time these products tend to get less and less potent as these crack down on the chemicals we're allowed to use. So instead of buying another one of these for 90 bucks, I thought I'd splurge and I'd buy a gallon of this stuff. This is from the body shop supply place, Aircraft paint stripper. Supposed to be a little bit more potent, I guess I would say. So this, with my discount that I get at the body shop supply place, was 115 Canadian dollars. Okay, I've drained the carburetors and I've loosened up the boots. So I'm just gonna pop these off the manifold. That, and then we'll disconnect the cables. Choke cable in these things comes out really easy. There. One thing I will point out, which I don't like very much, is there's a silicone on the back sides of these carburetors here, which I'm not a big fan of that, because it tells me that maybe those carburetor boots were leaking. So see in there, silicone down way in there, or between the head and the boots, and then they put some silicone in and around between the boots and the carbs as well. Oh dear. So I'm going to do a compression test. I kind of forgot to do it, actually. I've already taken the switch gear off here, so I'm going to have to plug that back in so I can get it to crank over. But before I pull the plugs, I just want to blast some air down there and just make sure there's no bits of dust and crap that's going to fall into the cylinders when I remove the plugs. So. All right, so let's go try the compression test here. So a couple of things to note. All the plugs are in the boots. The reason for that is some CDI ignition systems are quite sensitive. If you start to crank it without plugs in boots, you can damage some CDI ignition systems. Whether this is one of those that is susceptible to that, I don't know. But I always find it safer to make sure plugs are always in boots, and I've removed the rags that was stuffed in the carb intakes there, because I don't need them getting sucked into the cylinders. So there's no need to be doing throttle open here because there's no carburetors on there. It'll just get as much air as it needs, and then we'll see here if we can get anything to happen. So we're at about 170 on cylinder 1. Okay, this is cylinder 2. I'm hoping I've got enough juice in this boots pack that it's going to continue to allow me cranking it over. She's getting a bit slow. That one is about 180, 178-ish. This is number 3. So again, that is about 170. Okay, this is number 4. And it looks to be also, yeah, pretty much bang on 170. So 3 at 170, 1 at about 178. That's pretty darn good. All right, so there is the compression range for the H models, 139 to 213 psi, and we're running pretty nicely at 170 to 178. So I took the carburetor boots off, and I've been going through the process of cleaning all of the silicone out of all the RTV sealant, whatever you want to call it, out of all the grooves. Still got a ways to go. I just kind of been using my fingernail to get in there because I don't want to use any metal picks because I don't want to scratch anything. I think what I'm going to do at some point, it won't be immediately, but I'm going to throw these in the ultrasonic cleaner just to get them good and clean. They don't seem overly hard. I mean, they squish not too badly, right? It's there's been much harder carburetor boots that I've seen for sure. So I don't know if somebody threw the silicone on out of you know, an abundance of caution, worried about leaks, or that they were leaking. I don't know. So my plan is I'm going to put them in the ultrasonic cleaner at some point, clean them off, and then I might put them in the wintergreen oil and alcohol solution just to kind of soften them up just a little bit, and then we'll just have to see how they go when they go back on the bike, and we'll go from there, because these I've just spent the last hour or so looking for a new set. Not available from Kawasaki, not available from anywhere like Partzilla. And even if I found a set of used ones, like these are not cracked. So, you know, are you getting anything better than you already have? It's kind of hard to know, right? So. This is one of the rarer pieces, and it's quite unfortunate that somebody cut this chunk out of here, not realizing maybe that 30 or 40 years later that these things become worth a small fortune if you can find one. There's actually also, as I look here, this hole in the end here for something that's kind of looks like it's burnt through. Maybe it was touching the tire at some point. I don't know. Well, this bike I managed to get the sprocket nut off without too much difficulty. This makes a change. The last 3 bikes I've done, I've had to cut the nut off, but this one I obviously was not over torqued, so oil has all been drained out, and it looked super clean oil. It obviously hasn't been too long since this bike had an oil change, and I've just unbolted the oil cooler, and I've just got it sitting in the pan there so it can drain off and doesn't make a mess in my storage bin. But it seems to the easiest way to get the oil cooler off is just disconnecting it right here, because it's a real pain in the neck to get into some of those little tiny bolts kind of way in here. So, and that noise you just heard was the oil cooler falling into the oil drain pan, so that's just made a great mess everywhere. So I was kind of curious to find out what kind of paint this was. I was hoping and guessing that it was probably just a rattle can, kind of a lacquer type of paint, as opposed to a 2K, you know, two-part base or a single stage two-part paint with a hardener or whatever in it, because that would be much more difficult to remove. So I just put some acetone on a rag, and right away I got that. So then I threw some paint stripper on there, and it peeled off fairly easily with the razor blade. So at least it's just rattle can paint by the looks of it, and it shouldn't be too difficult to remove it. So yeah, it's getting there. We're getting close. I think the next thing I'll focus on is getting the wiring harness removed, and then the rest of it should be fairly straightforward, I think. So yeah, that's reasonable progress for this round, I think. So that's going to be the end for this video, and please stay tuned for the next one. We're going to try to get as much of this bike torn down as possible. But anyway, that'll be it for today, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.